just say, we do. It's the State City way.
Good afternoon. You're watching Real Talk with me, Anele, coming to you live on SABC3 where the stage is yours. Welcome to this Wednesday edition of the show, and it's about to be lit. Here's why I'm laughing. On the 31st of March, a landmark judgment was handed down in the Western Cape High Court that declared legal the personal use of marijuana in the privacy of our own homes. Undoubtedly, this has been a cause for celebration for many people in South Africa. But are we a step closer to decriminalizing dagga altogether? So today, I am asking exactly what does this ruling mean? What defense can you use if caught smoking? What is and is not allowed? To answer these questions and to help us navigate the complexity of this judgment, I've got a few guests in today. And first up, I'm joined in studio by Advocate James Grant. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So now, following the judgment of this judge, right, what does it mean?
It means that within the province of the Western Cape, you may use marijuana for your own personal, private use within your home. The bad news is that if you're living outside of the Western Cape, it doesn't apply to you because the jurisdiction of that court is limited to the Western Cape. So for the rest of the country, outside of the Western Cape, it's business as usual, at least in theory. Okay. Here's the strange thing, though, is that just by coincidence, I was in the Randburg Magistrates Court last week and noticed that every single case which was on the roll to be heard as a criminal case that day of possession of marijuana had been withdrawn. And so of about 20 charges that were due to be heard in that court that day, there were 4 of possession of marijuana, and every single one of them had been withdrawn, which is a strange considering that jurisdictionally it doesn't apply.
It only applies to the Western Cape.
Exactly. I'm assuming that there must have been a directive issued
To the other provinces to be like, stand down.
or at least a decision must have been taken for the purposes of the Randburg Magistrates Court.
But I mean, you still could get prosecuted because it's not entirely like...
Theoretically, absolutely, yes.
So you must tread carefully.
You must tread carefully. Here's the interesting thing, though, is that we must understand that the judgment given by Davis was to recognize that the right to privacy is inconsistent with the prohibition against the use of marijuana. Now, the important thing about a right in the Constitution is that it's all prevalent and it exists throughout time. So it's not a case of that it would only suddenly become lawful the moment the Constitutional Court says, yes, we recognize that this right overrides the prohibitions. What the court would be doing at that moment in time is recognizing that it's always been the case that your right to privacy overrides those prohibitions.
So can I quickly unpack the right to privacy? That's in your house, you're allowed to not be disturbed on your property, right? So that is then the law that says right to privacy, which means that they couldn't be coming into your house to bust you for smoking.
Yes, but theoretically, that's restricted to the Western Cape only. What I'm saying, though, is that the right which that decision relied on is the right to privacy, and that prevails throughout the entire country. So you could have this very difficult situation where theoretically a prosecution is possible, but ultimately it would be undermined if the Constitutional Court were to confirm Judge Davis's ruling.
Okay, I'm going to put what you just said in layman's terms with what I think I get. I'm also learning here. So basically, the right to privacy is a law that lives across the land.
Correct.
Right? And that is the precedence that they use to get this legalization of marijuana in your house.
Correct.
That's what they used in the Western Cape.
Right.
Therefore, if that one applies for the entire country, the right to privacy, then surely then it also applies that you can do what you want in your house.
Wherever you live. So the point would be that if you were to use it in your own home now and you were arrested for possession or use in your own home now, your defense would be, following Davis's judgment, my right to privacy.
Does this also apply for cultivation and selling? Because I mean, if I'm selling it inside my house, it's inside my house.
There's a little bit of lack of clarity in the Davis judgment on the right to purchase, because he refers to that. And yet the difficulty is that it doesn't seem to follow through in all of his judgments. So one wonders if he's only authorizing the use for one's own purposes, the cultivation for one's own purposes. But of course there would be a glaring problem where if you haven't got it before, of course you don't have it because it was illegal. Where do you get it? Legally. Now, in one of the concluding chapters, there seems to be a reference to the possibility of purchase within one's own private dwelling. But the problem is that that isn't carried through into the further concluding chapters. That's my only concern there.
Okay, and apparently it's a suspended ruling. Therefore, it can still go to the Constitutional Court.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Any high court which declares a statute, a parliamentary provision, unlawful by virtue of being inconsistent with the Constitution, that ruling has to go to the Constitutional Court to be confirmed by the Constitutional Court. And the reason is because you've got a local high court declaring an act of parliament to be unconstitutional. And that's why it has to go to the Constitutional Court, which has jurisdiction to finally determine what the position should be nationally.
What is, when it's being debated, argued, opposed in the Constitutional Court or in the High Court, how are they equating it to tobacco and to alcohol? I mean, what are they saying is the difference?
Well, we haven't been there yet, except in the previous case of Prince.
Yeah.
On that occasion, the difficulty, and I think the judges there even expressed the difficulty that the argument that was made by Prince was very narrowly relating to his right to use marijuana as a function of his religion. And he was asking for an exemption only on the basis, in fact, this was the difficulty. He conceded that there should continue to be a nationwide ban on it, but only an exception for religion for Rastafari. And the court said, I'm so sorry, but we cannot distinguish on this basis. It's just unsustainable. So the real arguments, I don't think, have been heard by the Constitutional Court in the sense of the issues around, is it more harmful than, say,
tobacco or alcohol,
tobacco, the waste of resources, for instance, involved in policing this. Just as an example, I mean, 1/5 of the court of Randburg was dedicated to hear possession of marijuana charges last week, just on the example that I gave you. So I don't, those arguments haven't yet been made, and it's a good thing because we're now going to
hear them out.
The Constitutional Court's going to have to hear them.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye, but before I let you go, you have to appreciate, you know, the pun in High Court, right? I just felt like saying that. Time for a quick ad break. When we return, we'll be joined by two cannabis activists who've been dubbed the Dacha couple. Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark are my guests, and when we return, they'll talk to us about their journey to have marijuana decriminalized that started 7 years ago. You want to hear this? And we're back. Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark in 2010 sued 7 South African government departments after being arrested for possession of dacha with the intent to sell. Since then, the couple has never looked back and are intent on taking what has been dubbed the trial of the plant to the highest court of the land, the Constitutional Court. 7 years ago.
Yeah. It's our lucky number, 7 departments, 7 years ago.
You know what I'm saying? Okay, why sue 7 departments though?
We had to cover all the bases. You know, any excuse that they could come and throw at us, we had to cover. So we had to obviously cover justice and police and all of those kind of our
So it's
courts
just
and
this,
that.
I'm sure you know them off by
Oh, you
heart.
go, no, we don't. We never
We
do. We always
always-
forget one.
I wonder why.
It's everything all the way from social development to the Department of International Relations.
Trade, industry, forestry, fisheries, because of course there's the industrial uses of hemp. It's not about smoking weed. We
Okay.
could grow fields of green for all to make shirts and socks.
make shirts, but you
so
can't
the
smoke it.
departments of forestry, food and fisheries, agriculture, justice, and the main man himself, the head of police.
Okay.
Why are they still arresting stoners?
So when this judgment comes from Judge Davis, obviously, is it a victory for you guys?
It's a start. It's a cool foot in the door.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of work to do because that judgment didn't actually do anything about cannabis. Nobody thrashed anything out about the pros and cons of dacha itself. The judgment was about a point in law about privacy
To your home.
to your home. So now I can leave the studio and go to the bottle store and get 25 grams worth of Johnny Walker Blue Label and drive it to my friend's braai. But I've got to use weed in the privacy of my own home. Isn't that silly?
Okay. So, but now my thing is, what are you saying about cannabis that you want to decriminalize then? Because you said the
No,
pros
we
and
don't.
the
We want it
cons.
completely re-legalized. The decriminalization won't do it because in Holland for the last 45 years it's been decriminalized,
Yeah.
which means you don't go to jail. But where do you get it from? Where's the supply? Nobody talks about the supply with decriminalization. So it's a failed piece of litigation, decriminalization.
So you guys were arrested for having the intent to sell it. So were you dealing dacha?
No, they found a quantity of dacha in our home.
Okay.
So then the law says, I mean, it's been disproved in court, but it still stands that the law says if you've got above 115 grams in your home or on your possession, then you are deemed to be a dealer.
That's
okay,
the science.
so on our criminal docket, it says the charges are for possession and dealing. So
Where did they find it? Were you guys driving and they stopped you?
no, they came and bashed down our kitchen door at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were looking for a drug lab. And they kept on, I mean, they really treated us really badly for 5 hours in our own home, and they kept on saying, where's the basement, you know, and going round and round. They said, we're going to keep you here in the cold until it gets light so that we can find out where this drug lab is on your property.
They weren't looking for weed.
They were
weren't
looking for something
They were looking
else.
for other drugs, but they found some weed after 5 hours in our attic.
Okay. So 7 years this has been going on. Do you guys have a criminal record?
No,
We've
we don't.
we've never been convicted. We're actually the oldest people we know on 1,000 rands bail from the state. We've been on bail for 7 years now.
Okay, because I'm just thinking personal things like, can you travel? Can you get a visa?
Yeah, no, we
Yes.
got all of that. And we travel and that was the reason we're doing it.
Okay.
Because if we'd been convicted, then we would have a criminal record and then we wouldn't get a visa, we wouldn't get a job, etc., etc. And that happens to thousands of South Africans every single day. Our inbox is full of people that said, I've just gone to get a visa to go to teach English in Tokyo. But they wouldn't give me one because I got a criminal record from when I signed an admission of guilt when I was 16 years old. And it's there for 10 years.
Okay, but then outside, if you guys were never convicted, right? Then what charge do you have?
So what happened is they charged us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we found a very clever lawyer in Pretoria who suggested that what we do is get the case put on hold pending the outcome of this constitutional challenge.
Okay, because
see.
that's also been going on
So
for
that
a
is
lengthy
also
time.
that is also what we do for anybody who's arrested for dacha in South Africa. It doesn't matter whether you're arrested with 5 grams or 500 kilograms. We can apply because we're all equal under the law. We have a system whereby you can also apply to have your case put on hold pending the outcome of our case. So it's basically those charges have been shelved. It's called a stay in prosecution. And that's been shelved for the 7 years, which means that once we have won in the Constitutional Court, which we are very confident of
That you
doing,
will.
that we are definitely going to win,
Yeah.
then we will take ourselves off back to the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court up the road here,
Yeah.
and we will say, Mr. Magistrate, you are now to please scrap these charges against us, and you will give us each
We want our
1,000
1,000
rand
rand
bail.
back.
1,000 rand. Was just for the, was 1,000 rand for the both of you, 1,000 rand
No,
each?
each.
Oh, 2,000 rand.
Not bad, eh? We've just dealt with a case today, 12,000 rand for one bail for a couple of plants. There is no table in law in any jurisdiction that says 5 plants, 5 grand, 6 plants, 6 grand. It's on a whim. It's a human nature thing. If they don't like you, it'll be 20 grand bail. There's
So
no
you guys
rules.
you guys had good faces. That's why it was only
That's
like
why
a
we were so
Yes.
polite.
You were so polite,
So
and
polite.
you would look like no harm.
And I've been in the same jail 3 times, for the same thing.
For the
I've
same
tried this
thing.
before. I tried this in 1999, but I wasn't clever enough.
But I want to ask, what did you do? Because I mean, this looks like it consumes all of your time. What do you do? What's your 9 to 5?
This.
Okay, so this is what we do full time. For the first about 2.5, nearly 3 years of our case, we continued to work in the film and TV industry. So this is a
Okay.
very familiar environment for us, albeit on the other side of the camera. And then it came to a point where actually our legal team said to us, if you're going to win at this, and you've really, really got to build a huge social activism campaign. You've got to be involved in international drug policy. You have to really do the best job that you can. So we've jacked up our little business that we have at home. We have a little business that we run whereby we rent out cottages and that. So that is keeping us going.
Also, that's how you make your money.
That's how we keep,
Yeah, that's how we
keep
keep the
going.
wolf on the door.
And we do this full time with a lot of help from other activists. We've got amazing friends and family around us.
Because I
who
mean, legal
support us.
fees are not cheap. Who's footing all of that?
So, well, thank you. Thanks to the Pro Bono organization, who really, really amazing bunch of people up on Constitutional Hill.
Yeah.
We found Schindler's Attorneys in Melrose Arch, and they are doing this for greatly reduced fees because they can see the merit in our case. And we actually went to them to help us to register our non-profit company, because to try and get a non-profit company through the CIPC, and it's all about an illegal substance, we needed legal help. And while they were registering our non-profit company, they said, you know what, this is so exciting, let's take on this case.
You guys are known as the Dacha couple, right? Isn't Dacha such an ugly word? Would you not prefer the marijuana couple?
No, not in any form. We wouldn't swap it for anything. We want to readjust it and put it back in its rightful place in South African history. It's been vilified in a generation, but it goes back thousands of years. It doesn't mean the word dacha, as far as we can tell in etymology, goes back thousands of years to the San Bushmen. And they used it to describe a feeling, not a plant. It wasn't dacha as a plant. It was
the feeling you get
it
when
means
you're high.
intoxication.
Okay.
So they used the word dacha to describe many plants in their pharmacopoeia. But we get lots of people saying, why don't you call yourself the cannabis couple? Or I hate dacha. But at least it gets the conversation going.
This is true.
It's an emotive word. And if we go into the townships and call it cannabis, nobody knows what we're talking about. But when you say the word dacha, either they go, or they laugh. There's no in between. So it's still an extreme word, yeah.
So I want to talk about the medicinal side of it, and I'm pretty sure you know that side as well because you are the activist for it. We're going to discuss that at length when we come back. Government has taken its first official steps in legalizing the manufacture of marijuana for medicinal use, making South Africa the very first African country to downgrade cannabis from a Schedule 7 banned substance to a Schedule 6 prescription drug. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, the cannabis couple, the Dacha couple, will still be here. We'll see you in a bit. And welcome back. If you've just joined us, I hope you've not been getting high. Sorry, still not legal. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get the Medical Control Council because they are currently in meetings reviewing the court judgment and deliberating the necessary guidelines for medicinal use of cannabis. But the show must go on, right? And I feel like I'm in good hands here. I feel like if anybody knows about cannabis and Dacha as a whole, it's you guys. During the ad break, you were saying, you made a very bold statement.
Say it again if you want.
Please say it again.
All right, well, we don't think there are any doctors in South Africa that are medically qualified to talk about medical cannabis because they've never been taught it. It's not in their curriculum. They know nothing about the endocannabinoid system, which is what cannabis relates to in the human body, well, in a mammal's body.
So, I mean, there's proper research, and there's proper studies,
Tons.
and there's proper, I mean...
Tons. 600 peer-reviewed studies last year.
Do you know what I'm saying? That shows that the medicinal purpose of marijuana is of a positive one. When you are facing the High Court and you're facing all, your strife, does that not say anything to anyone?
I think it does. You know, our High Court case is constructed across what we call 4 platforms. So we have responsible adult use, that's us. We have industrial use, that's hemp. You know, hemp, the industrial uses of cannabis. Then you have the traditional cultural and religious uses, and you've been talking about
that's
the
religion.
Rastafari.
Yeah.
And then we have the health uses. You know, it's not only medicinal, it's general health and well-being. And of course, we have the MCC who brought out their guidelines for the cultivation of cannabis a few months ago, in November last year, which we believe, and this is also another bold statement, which is dead in the water. Because as a doctor friend of ours was explaining to us, all very well to reschedule this from Schedule 7 to Schedule 6. But as a doctor of psychiatric medicine, I might add, a Schedule 6 substance is something which is locked up in
hectic,
a vault in a hospital
And you
that
need a
doctors
doctor
have
to
to
prescribe
sign.
it to
Signatures.
you.
They have to sign. 2 doctors have to give their signatures to get that out of the vault. There's a whole lot of rigmarole and paperwork.
Yeah.
But now the same Schedule 6 substance you can grow in your own garden.
Yeah.
So as far as we're concerned, the MCC guidelines are rightfully so dead in the water because it's just handing this plant to the pharmacy companies on a plate. And we know, and if you had to watch our social media feeds, you know that every single person who uses cannabis in this country hates the pharma companies.
Yeah.
Because there's this huge threat all over the world. You just have to look at the latest bill that has come out of Canada who are about to legalize. It's all designed for the pharma companies.
So that they can
in-
obviously then make
Exactly.
billions from it.
Exactly. So in South Africa, it is our responsibility as activists who speak for the people to keep those pharma companies as far away from our weed as we possibly can.
As far away from our
Yeah.
weed as we
No,
possibly can.
Another point. Two days ago,
Yeah.
the DEA scheduled a synthetic cannabis drug as a Schedule 2 drug. In America, THC, the psychoactive bit, is illegal. It's Schedule 1.
Just quickly, don't run ahead. DEA, that's
The
the
drug-
drug
the-
FBI
yeah,
in America.
those dudes in
Yes.
America. And the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, the people who put the categorization on medication.
Yeah.
They have categorized a synthetic THC as a Schedule 2.
I saw that picture. It doesn't look like the real stuff.
Well, no, that's spice. That's a street drug. I'm talking about medication in a capsule that is given by a doctor to a patient in a hospital.
Okay.
It's Schedule 2. But the real deal is Schedule 1, which means you can't use it and you can't actually research it. But if it's a Schedule 2 drug, you can research it. So they're still locking
That's
it down.
the American schedule.
They understand its
Okay.
efficacy, but they're still not releasing the real thing.
Just so we're clear on, like, the grading. So Schedule 7 is, only an anesthetist can really give it to you. That's how.
A Schedule 7 has no medicinal purpose whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay, so Schedule 7 is where cannabis is now.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a dangerous dependence-producing substance with no medicinal use whatsoever. They love that
follow.
whatsoever.
I
Okay,
follow.
so what the MCC and the people in Parliament, and I'm sure he's turning in his grave, Mario Ambrosini, who actually
is?
started this whole conversation.
Okay.
The IFP MP who was dying of cancer.
Okay.
And he introduced this as a bill in 2014
Okay.
as a way for terminal patients to be free to take whatever they wanted to take for their terminal illness. Unfortunately, cannabis was put in there and it overtook the whole bill and it became a cannabis bill. Okay, nothing we can do about that. So it sits in Schedule 7 now. What the MCC want to do is they want to reschedule it just down to Schedule 6, okay? Which allows them to do the research. And of course, the MCC and the Medical Research Council, they want the grants to do the research. They don't want that. It's not them wanting us to have the medicine or anything. It's all about them wanting to have the grants to be able to do the first human trials on cannabis in South Africa. And I mean, they just have to look at human trials. They just have to look at 20
You
million
guys have
South
got the 600,
Africans. I'm volunteering for a trial right now.
For free at that.
Yeah, take my blood. No, really, take it. Check how little cholesterol I've got. Check my blood pressure. Check the fact that I don't have any arthritis. I've been smoking heavily for 30 years.
We were
I'm as fit
talking-
as you like.
That I was reading Michael J. Fox's book, and he's got Parkinson's, and he mentions it in his book that cannabis is used as well for Parkinson's. So now I want to just run through in terms of immune system and diseases, what is cannabis,
Sure, the efficacy, there's a yearly book comes out called Granny Storm Crow's List. And there's 680 different ailments that have been, the cannabis has proved to be efficient at reversing or stabilizing. 300 cancers. But this is all done on lab rats and animals and heaven knows what, because you're not allowed to do it on a human because they've kept it in Schedule 1.
So what are the challenges of your guys' fight? Like
Well, one of the
biggest
challenges
ones?
is to completely ignore medical marijuana because we don't believe it is an issue because we call it cannabis. It
Okay.
implies that there's two types of weed here. One's a medical cannabis, marijuana, and the other thing's the stuff I smoke that hasn't got
So
a
you're the
barcode.
baddie, but the other one is
the
being
other one
helped.
is bad. It's going to make me crazy.
Yeah.
But the other stuff with a barcode on, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Weed is weed. So we don't believe there is such a thing as medical marijuana. We just call it marijuana. It's just,
Yeah.
it's all the same
Yeah.
thing. But if you get it prescribed by a doctor, it becomes medication.
So your biggest banner above your fight against the state is that it's a victimless crime that they are
Totally.
criminalizing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unpack that for me.
Yes. Okay, so we are two middle-aged people who are minding our own business on our property, and we like to smoke a bit of weed. And who are we hurting?
Who are you hurting?
Okay,
Not
who
even
are
us.
we hurting?
Not even hurting myself.
The prohibitionists would argue, okay, that drugs cause problems in society. And then with that comes all of their old lemon arguments, as we call them, like it is a gateway drug to other. So that is probably one of our biggest challenges, is to overcome that stigma that if you smoke a joint, you're going to be on heroin tomorrow, okay?
It's
and
an
you're going to
entrance
steal
drug. It's an
Yeah.
entrance
and you're going to
drug.
steal your grand's TV, and you're going to end up on the street, and you're going to, you know, whatever. The people have written the screenplay from start to
Yeah.
finish already.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably our biggest challenge, is that stigma, because you know, it's been nearly 100 years of prohibition of cannabis, and it is probably the most successful propaganda campaign ever, ever, much
Dacha
better than
is
any other political propaganda campaign. So that's our stigma, and I think that in that way, the whole thing with medical cannabis has been a good thing, because the whole
Because
idea.
that's your entrance to
because
like,
yes, but it
decriminalizing
was.
actually.
It's kind of old hat now. It was in America.
Yeah.
In the 60s and the 70s, this whole idea of medical marijuana, as they call it, was introduced in California as a way of softening the blow. So we can say thank you to that. But you know what? We've moved on. This is the 21st century now, 2017. We're over the gateway drug. We're over the fact that we are not schizophrenic. We are over the fact that it's going to damage the children. We're over all of, there's only a certain amount of arguments against us.
Okay, so I must let you go now. Where can people go and read up more on this? Because I can see you guys have got a lot more to say.
We're going to do an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, on Reddit tonight, on the South African Reddit thread at 7
Okay.
o'clock.
AMA, ask
An
me
AMA,
anything.
Ask Me Anything. So
Okay.
we'll lay it bare then. And if you put in the words Dacha couple into Google,
Google.
you will find us.
I'll
and
see
if you
two pretty
can't, you
people
shouldn't have a
who are
smartphone.
minding their own business. Myrtle, Julian, thank you so much. Time to take a breather. When we come back, we look at the economic benefits that could come with the lucrative green gold industry. Stay with us. And welcome back. My next guest is a man who did research on the business of cannabis, asking, is there a socio-economic business case to be made for cannabis legalization in South Africa? Joining me in studio is the business consultant from Genesis Analytics, Vladislav Laikshevic. Welcome to Real Talk. So, I mean, on a personal note, in 2014, your father succumbed to cancer, but what extended his life were cannabis suppositories. Am I right in assuming that?
Yes, whether it extended his life or not, I can't be certain, but he was using them for the last 9 to 12 months of his life to ease the side effects of chemotherapy, as well as hopefully to alleviate some of the side effects he had from the actual cancer.
All right. I mean, South Africa, we'll take the business of it. South Africa is the epicenter, right, of, there hasn't been research done as to how much money that is being made, yet there is money being made. So what's your argument on that?
Without a doubt, there's money being made.
Oh, by who?
Well, that's, and not all of it is in the illicit markets in Southern Africa. So the studies suggest that Africa is one of the largest contributors on the continent, Morocco and Southern Africa being the biggest producers. So in 2008, estimates were that South Africa accounted for about 16% of global cannabis seizures. So just what was found by the police. The challenge is that when we talk South Africa in those contexts, they mix South Africa, Lesotho, Swaziland, Malawi, all those regions. But in general, we are firmly in the epicenter.
When will we reach a point when we can legally export marijuana to countries that have legalized marijuana for medicinal use?
Oh, yeah, that's probably a way away. So at the moment, we only have really Uruguay that's at the national level legalized cannabis. No other country in the world has done that yet. And even Uruguay hasn't really fully rolled it out yet. I guess North Korea also doesn't have laws governing cannabis, so 2 countries. But the United Nations Conference on Drugs and Trafficking prevents countries from trading in marijuana at the moment. That is under review, and hopefully, I think this year or next year, they're reviewing whether that can be scheduled down, given the changes in tides that are happening as far as cannabis and attitudes towards marijuana around the world are changing.
You're a numbers man. So you are a numbers man. So I feel like there's a lot of money being used to tackle, the courts and the judgments. So do you feel that the amount of money that can be made from legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing it, because apparently those are 2 different things, I learned a lot today, the amount of money that can be made in doing those 2 things far outweighs the costs that are going into the fight?
Yes. So as you mentioned, I like the numbers. I was hoping to have a quantifiable business case.
Okay.
Unfortunately, where we're at in terms of the research that has been done, and also the research that would need to be done for me to be able to do that, we're too far away. So I ended up with a qualitative model looking at really trying to understand exactly that question that you've just posed. So I looked at what are the harms prevented by prohibition. So banning cannabis, what harms have we prevented in South Africa? The second aspect was what harms has cannabis caused in South Africa? The third one is what harms has cannabis not prevented in South Africa? And the last one was what harms are related to but not caused by cannabis? And by really looking at the problem through those 4 pillars, really, that formed the framework of my research, it became very clear that doing anything other than what we're doing at the moment makes more sense to both the economy and society in South Africa.
When it comes to minors, I know you mentioned this in your study that, decriminalizing and legalizing then kind of gives us the power as to, then criminalizing the sale of it to minors. When you think about it, how old should somebody be allowed before they smoke dagga?
It should be an adult decision.
So 18.
I do buy into that. Yes.
Oh, so 18. So when you're saying that you're saying we'll criminalize it and make it like alcohol, that you have to have your ID before you can be able to buy it from somewhere, and the people who are selling it would be bound by those laws that you may not sell to somebody younger.
So that conclusion that I drew is based on what has happened in the United States, in the states that have legalized cannabis for recreational use.
Okay.
What has happened there is adult use has gone up, prevalence rates have increased. But all of the studies on child use have suggested that usage among minors has either stayed the same as it was pre the laws being eased or has declined. That's been attributed to multiple factors by different economists. So some suggest that really by giving people who are selling cannabis access to a much bigger market, they have no incentive to sell to kids because they're putting their business in jeopardy. The market is big enough to compensate for that. The other factor is the cool factor.
Yeah.
I mean, cannabis has always been a bit of a counterculture drug, which is maybe why it's been so easy to paint it as this
rebellion of it, right?
Yeah, and now if your, soccer moms are smoking weed, how rebellious is that?
If the jean wearing with the pleats and they're driving like station wagons and they're smoking weed, you're like, yeah, no, that's not what we're gonna do. So when in your study, and I mean, you know it better than anyone else, what do you want to leave us with? What do you feel like is the crescendo of your study, that this is like the headline of it, and that's what we must always remember?
That we need to change what we're doing at the moment. What South Africa is doing, what the laws in South Africa governing cannabis make no sense to society or the South African economy.
And what do you feel, I don't know if you want to go into this, I don't want to get into trouble, Vlad. What do you feel about, the pharmaceuticals, as in what their motive is behind, the scheduling of it, taking it from 7 to 6. Do you feel like there's like a cloak and dagger movement from that side, that they want to be able to economically benefit from the legalization of it?
Well, I mean, without a doubt, they want to economically benefit from it. And,
Yeah.
I mean, Jules spoke about what's happening in the States. In
Yeah.
the UK, there's been a drug on the market already for some time using synthetic cannabinoids, while medical marijuana is still not recognized. So clearly there are moves behind the scenes using synthetic cannabinoids, which when we actually have a perfectly good natural substitute.
Okay. You're not going anywhere. After the break, joining us is Dr. Thabo Rangaka, board member of the Psychiatry Management Group and a pain management expert. Wow. I'll also be reading some of your questions, and I'm sure you have plenty, and comments that have come to us via social media. Don't forget, though, our weekly giveaway on the at-home e-gift card. Make sure you enter using the details on the screen. The weekly competition closes tomorrow at midnight, so don't forget about that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Thank you for being part of this important conversation. Are we, in fact, a step closer to decriminalizing cannabis? The Medical Council are currently having meetings on the regulation of medicinal marijuana, where issues like licensing and distribution will be discussed. So Vlad, let's talk about ownership and the monopoly. Is there a risk that once marijuana is legalized, cultivation and supply of cannabis can be placed in the hands of the government?
Yes. In short, realistically, we have no idea what the policy might look like in the world of legalized cannabis in South Africa. But that is the model that Uruguay followed. So in Uruguay, the government doesn't produce the cannabis, but they control how much is produced, exactly the quantities. They regulate the price. It very much does operate.
So they would be well
like a
within their
state
right
monopoly.
to control it as the government.
We have no idea what policies the government might choose once we go down the route of legalization, but that is a very real
Are
option.
you allowed to tell me how you personally feel about if the government does take control over it?
It's a difficult one. I mean, as I said before, it would still be a move in the right direction given the futility of the situation we're facing at the moment.
This is true. So, Doctor, you joining us. Thank you so much, because earlier there was a question about moving marijuana from Schedule 7 to Schedule 6. What does the downgrading mean? I know the question has been answered already by our Dacha couple, but I mean, you're a doctor. Sometimes you just want to hear from a doctor.
Yes.
Talk to me.
Thank you. Downgrading from Schedule 7 to Schedule 6 means that you will not have to have the permission of the Minister of Health to prescribe and dispense if it's Schedule 7. If it's Schedule 6, then you just need to do a motivation, possibly to the local, to your head of establishment, and so psychiatrists and other people can then prescribe it.
But Dr. Rangaka, in your opinion, I mean, there's been many cases brought forward where people said that they've used it, if they had cancer, they use it to alleviate the pains and the side effects that you get from chemotherapy. Do you back up these studies?
They probably are right. It depends how they were taking it, because the experience we have, and we mine at the bottom line, at the Nyaupe level, where we see youngsters, definitely younger than 15, who smoke it and mix it up with codeine to cause this Nyaupe effect.
But Nyaupe is a different drug to the Dacha.
No.
School me.
Nyaupe exists because of Dacha. You mix Dacha with codeine, which you get.
Mix?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this potent drug, the main effect being from the heroin, from which codeine gets converted to heroin, which is then
Vlad, do you want to jump in here? Because I'm not that schooled, but I just feel like heroin and codeine and Dacha are two separate things. So when they mix together, it's like Red Bull and Jägermeister, two different things, but together it's a Jäger bomb.
But it just feels weird to put the blame on Dacha when
Yes.
we're talking heroin.
Why
which
aren't we
is
fighting
a
the
much more
heroin?
serious issue?
There's no other way in which the so-called Nyaupe causes the devastation than when it's Dacha mixed to something. They don't mix cigarettes or tobacco with codeine
Okay.
to cause to get the same effect. They mix it only with dagga.
So dagga on its own.
Dagga on its own has its problems. When I say we, psychiatrists like me, I mean, I've just come rushing from the military hospital
Yes.
where I was admitting.
Thank you so much for your time.
I was admitting a youngster who is the son of a military veteran, sorry, a military senior,
Yes.
who smokes dagga.
He's addicted
Whether
to
it's
dagga.
clean, yeah, whether it's clean dagga or not, we will see when we take the blood because we'll find the codeine there. But the fact is that the dagga causes devastation by itself
Yeah.
in the youngsters, and my colleagues who do the research, like Dr. Bonga Chiliza
Yeah.
in Stellenbosch, they have demonstrated several times over and over again that children who smoke dagga end up being schizophrenic as they grow up.
Okay.
It messes them up.
Okay, so then, because I see you alluding to youngsters the entire time. So let's say I start smoking dagga at 25. So your problem is youngsters and not necessarily dagga itself.
No, it's dagga because it becomes available. I mean, like that judge was saying, you smoke it in your house, in the privacy of your house. I mean, how do you exclude youngsters from the privacy of your house and plant it in your yard? I mean, how do you exclude them? Availability to smoke it is the problem that we worry about. If it comes as like bottled, of course, in the hands of the pharmaceuticals ultimately, that's the only way in which it can be unavailable. But if you
So you're for it being used for medicinal purposes,
Yes.
being regulated by pharmaceutical companies?
No, not necessarily by pharmaceutical. What I mean is ultimately it will have to be designed in such a way that it is available as suppositories and as tablets and as medicines to be drunk.
In your study, is anything he said that you want to just like put your hand up to and be like, it's everything he said, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the studies, I haven't seen the South African studies, but I have seen a couple. Most of the studies have highlighted there's some correlation, but cannot prove causality, that smoking dagga makes you go schizophrenic. There is evidence that if you are genetically predisposed to it, it
Yeah.
may augment that disease or have some effect on it, but if you're not, the causality correlation argument, I have struggled to find literature confirming it either way.
Dr. Thabo Rangaka, any closing words from your end?
I am opposed, and as is SASOP, the Society of Psychiatrists in South Africa, to the legalization, decriminalisation.
I know I also learned it's two different things
Yeah,
today.
decriminalisation of cannabis.
Yeah.
Because we are unable to control tobacco in the first place. Now, how are we going to end smoking, especially by youngsters? I talk about youngsters because their brains are malleable. They are still developing.
growth.
When you smoke cigarettes, then you go on to dagga, and then you go on to nyaupe, then that's the end of the safety and health of your brain.
All right, I have to go. Thank you so much, Vlad. Thank you for your time. Dr. Thabo Rangaka, I know you said you came from the military hospital. Thank you for your time as well. Wow. This has been fascinating. I've learned so much. I hope you have too as well. It's not yet over. Private use of marijuana still needs to go to the Concord. The Medicinal Control Council is yet to publish guidelines on the medicinal use of cannabis. We'll be keeping a close eye on these developments. Tomorrow, however, I'm in studio with Ayanda Ngwane, talking life after loss and grief. Join us tomorrow, 5 p.m. SABC 3. Bye.
That's cheeky.